This podcast is about the rebellion against all of the big pharma integrated narrative that's not about being healthy. Health and wellness is peptides, biologics, and cells, not some big pharma-sponsored corporate medical narrative.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Zero Downside podcast. I'm Dr. Wade McKenna. As always, please, I want to thank you for subscribing to the channel. Please hit like and subscribe if you're not, so we can continue to bring you this content. In the post-vaccinated world, your clot risks from surgery have dramatically increased. The biggest clot risks that a patient runs are associated with surgical intervention. The only bigger risk factor you have of developing a blood clot is if you've already had a blood clot. If you've already had a blood clot, your risk scores for any future surgery is really high. If you've already had a blood clot and now you're getting ready to have a big surgery, especially when we talk about in the orthopedic world, lumbar spine, joint replacement of the hip or knee, those procedures in and of themselves represent clot risks of anywhere between 10 and 30%, depending on the study, the comorbid factors, whether you've had a clot before, and more so now, your vaccination history. And that's just a fact. The associated clot risks with spike protein levels are quantitatively elevated, and we need to be more and more careful with the liberal application of a surgery that can have a substantial increased complication rate from what we were traditionally used to in the pre-COVID world. That being said, now we have a patient who's been told they need a joint replacement. You look at an x-ray and their hip's not extruded, the ball of the head's not completely collapsed. There are some times where someone has hip pain, you do an x-ray, they have avascular necrosis, the round ball is completely collapsed, it looks like a crushed egg. I don't think that cells are a very economic or beneficial or long-term option for that patient. I don't think it makes a big difference. So if you have dramatic intra-articular incongruity, loss of the shape of your hip, and I'm not talking about all the nonsense hip arthroscopy where we're going to shave off this, or it's a cam pincer deformity, and you have, wait a minute, if I only have right hip pain and they're telling me I have this cam pincer deformity, I need this hip scope and reshape it, my other hip has that same cam pincer deformity, it doesn't hurt at all. Why are we blaming it on that? But that's what everyone does. So when you've been the patient, and this is what happens when people come and see, well, they told me because my hip is shaped wrong. Well, your hip's been shaped like that for a really long time. How long have you been hurting? 6 months. Well, your hip was shaped like that last year and you didn't hurt. So why this year is the shape of your hip causing all your pain? It's not. So if that's not true, and it's not true, then let's move on to the next step. It's about adhesions, it's about inflammatory load, and it's about the hyperactive nerve at that hip. Because of the inflammatory load in that volume in the hip, it begins to be over-responsive. I want to make that nerve not over-responsive. I'm going to radiofrequency ablate it. It's going to get rid of some of those sensory fibers for maybe up to 2 years. I'm going to inject it and break loose all those adhesions. I'm going to give you a little bit more motion, and we're going to give the cells a chance. For now, you get 6 to 9 months to where you can see continued articular health and growth. What happens to the new cartilage? Well, if the cells wear out and died, well, the new cartilage you get to keep. So your joint doesn't go from, well, the minute the cells go away, your hip's bad again. That's not. We're trying to push back the hands of time, right? We've reinforced the structure. We've got rid of the adhesions. We've lowered your inflammatory load. The most important part to me with the ablation, and this is the part that no one even talks about, and I think it's the most beneficial part of this entire paradigm of thinking about a joint wearing out, is that if I can keep you active, you do better and you grow more cartilage and you get better articular health and range of motion. Wait a minute. So what's my downtime after that injection and ablation? Like, I can't put all my weight on it right away, right? No. The reason we're ablating your hip is so you can return to normal function as quickly as possible. Why would I want you to do that? You're going to limit the amount of cartilage you grow. No. God's really smart. When you put the way that cartilage would grow is in response to the stimulus of wear. So if you're active, you can grow more cartilage on the surface because it knows what to do with the new resources it has. You can't diagnose what's wrong with your car without starting it and driving it around. Like if you want to know if the front end pulls to the right, how do you know that if it's sitting in the driveway? The body functions in that same way. It needs a little feedback. It needs to know that with weight bearing, that's where I need to grow the cartilage. We've never seen cartilage grow on a non-weight bearing surface. When you put a bunch of cells in the hip, you don't see the rim of the cartilage around the joint encroached and overgrows. It's never happened. Heterotopic ossification, growing extra bone around the capsule, that doesn't happen with the stem cell injection. That doesn't happen with bone marrow aspirate injection. That doesn't happen with the hip ablation. Happens all the time with surgery, with putting metal in a joint. You can calcify all the soft tissues around it because the body's being stimulated to grow without the feedback loop because you took out someone's hip and put a bunch of metal in it. So heterotopic ossification is a big problem. Limits motion eventually. It starts loosening eventually. It can cause chronic pain. It grows big masses into the muscles. Is there any downside of that happening with the injections we're talking about or the ablation? No. Does that mean that your treatment for the post-op complication after a total could be completely eliminated? Yeah, because you're not going to have that complication. So now we've taken this problem that in Western medicine is either a steroid shot, ignore it, or replace it, and turn it to something that not only can we get your activity level up much quicker, not only do we have no rate of revision, meaning that what's the chance that this joint fails, how often may I need it redone, and am I putting that joint at risk of an infection? Because an infected total joint is a nightmare. You have to take all the metal out, put an antibiotic spacer in, be on IV antibiotics for 6 to 8 weeks, and then come back and do the entire joint again. And joint infections are a huge problem in an elderly population, an immunocompromised population, or in anyone that doesn't want to have more than one surgery. Like if you're going to have a hip replacement, it should be because you're close enough to the end, you've lost a lot of function, nothing else has helped, and it's worth the surgical risks. We're pre-treating you for a blood clot. We're trying to do all the things to optimize you to not have a surgical complication of that. And even after that, the hip can fail, it can loosen, it can get infected, it can develop heterotopic HO. What is the complication of putting that surgery off by breaking loose the capsular adhesions, decreasing the overall inflammatory load to the joint, restoring the potential of articular cartilage growth, and limiting the pain response at the posterior capsule with radiofrequency ablation so that you don't have that same intense overactive nerve secondary to the long-term inflammatory load you've been under. When we talk about ablation, it's not going to make it so numb you can't put weight on it or so numb you're going to break it. No, that's not the way it works. It gets rid of the superficial sensory fibers to the capsule that are so inflamed they're kind of hyperesthetic. Hyperesthetic is a word in medicine that means it hurts more than it should. It means the nerve is really inflamed, and everyone that's had a ding in your elbow or a facial nerve, something that like you can almost breathe on the nerve and it will hurt. Like bad carpal tunnel, people come in like, God, I can't even straighten my wrists at night. They wake me up with my hands numb and tingling. That's hyperesthesia, meaning the nerve is crying for help. The nerve at the hip can be hyperesthetic in the presence of an inflammatory load, joint space collapse, and capsular scarring. With a radiofrequency ablation, we limit all that. It's become a really clutch part of my practice. It's restored my faith in injecting cells in the hip because now people are much more patient with giving the cartilage a chance to grow and heal because they're not having the same amount of pain. And their activity level comes back faster. So now, instead of someone having a procedure that takes weeks to be able to get up and bear weight again, if that's still the case, it limits your ability to grow cartilage. So my goal with the ablation was, can I just get the pain out of your way enough to get your activity level better so that you'll heal better and faster? That's way more scientific and way more evidence-based than ignoring it, putting steroids in it that hurt people, or just replacing it before we tried anything else. And I will tell you, from a horrific standpoint, the mistakes that happen all the time. Let's go through the most common mistakes with a joint replacement. Number one, wasn't even the hip that was hurting. It was coming from an L4-5 disc. There are plenty of patients we see that have had a hip replacement. Their hip still hurts all the time. They come in to me because they've been back to that doctor 3 or 4 times. They've been to another hip doctor several times. Now they've had another joint fellow, and they've been to the school, and everyone's told them, well, the hip joint looks fine. I don't know why you still hurt. But no one ever straightened out their leg, asked them about coughing, sneezing, did an x-ray of their back and said, does it hurt here? Do you ever have lateral calf pain? Does your leg feel weak sometimes in the front? Do you have a little hamstring pain? Does it hurt on the outside of your hip? Because that's the sign of an L4-5 disc or of a radiculopathy. So back pain, leg pain, hip pain is back pain more than 50% of the time. So 50% of the people that come in and think they need a hip replacement, it's not even the hip causing their pain. And if you're not going to someone that's going to actually examine you, check the range of motion of your hip, take your leg out, rotate your leg back and forth, flex your knee back and forth, ask you questions like, do you have trouble putting on a sock, right? Then you don't even know for sure it's your hip hurting. People come in, oh, my hip hurts. It's only my hip, my outside of my hip. Yeah, but is it out here? If it's on the lateral margin of your hip, that's not hip pain. Now, it can be if it's the bursa. Then there is a use for steroid. Hey, there we go. I just found a use that we can talk about, a clinical use of catabolic corticosteroids that's effective. You inject the greater trochanteric bursa. If it makes a big difference, breaks loose the adhesions, it may not come back. That's a good use of a steroid. Well, I finally thought of one because I'm pushed all the time. Well, what about putting some steroids in the joint? No, it's a really bad idea. But not if you have greater trochanteric bursitis. That's not someone that should have a hip replacement, by the way, if you just have tenderness over the bursa. So we will do that. Sometimes I'll do a little block in the bursa just to make sure that it's not most of your pain coming from the bursa, because it's a really easy in-office way to kind of hone in on your diagnosis. And again, let's remember, Western medicine gets wrong the diagnosis in most of the things it over or mistreats. So let's get the diagnosis right first. And for me, that's probably the most clutch thing we see is someone that's had a joint replacement, still hurts because it was their back, or someone that has a really bad hip. They've had a joint replacement. Now they're told they need the other one, and they're convinced they need it, but it's not as bad as that one, and they're just trying desperately to not have a joint replacement. Or they've been through a bunch of surgeries. There's significant risk of an infection because they've had some other infection in the joint, or they've had a blood clot. If I wanted to avoid a joint replacement, I would want to take away my pain, the capsular expansion. I would want to keep that from coming back, limit the inflammatory response. I would want to see if there was anything that could make my cartilage healthier, cellular volume with biologics, in our practice, concentrated bone marrow aspirate, and digested umbilical cord tissue. And I would want to not have so much pain in a very quick fashion. I would do a hip ablation. The ablation from the posterior approach has been really effective. I'm not a big fan of the anterior techniques. We did those 8-10 years ago. I wasn't impressed, stopped doing it. When we developed this posterior technique with a long enough probe to be able to do it, I've been extremely happy with the results. We're back to me feeling good about that in the practice again, instead of having to counsel people on just be patient, just be patient. Now I think we can make a fairly significant difference pretty quick, but I'm hoping for a long-term result that helps you avoid surgery. I know that's kind of a lot of information, and I have people say all the time that, talking to me can kind of be like drinking from a fire hose. But I'm trying to get a lot of information into an efficient, short time for you. The quick outline of all this is I don't think everyone needs a joint replacement that's had one. And as evidenced by the fact that plenty of people have had a joint replacement that still have pain. Plenty of people have had a joint replacement that had a blood clot, died. My dad died after a total knee, not one that I did, but had a big blood clot at a university center. And did poorly. that's a significant complication. In the post-vaccine world, it's even worse. The amount of weight gain, inactivity, blood clot risk, all of those risks are real. Even a knee scope at 2 months is associated with almost a 10-pound gain of weight. Like, we should tell everyone that, right? Because we're limiting your activity. That's not the case if I ablate you, put cells in it, break loose adhesions, and see how fast I can get your motion back. Again, the Zero Downside Podcast. The reason for the name of this podcast isn't because I named it. It's because I have a bunch of smart aleck employees that hear me tell patients all the time, it's about the downside. And what we want is let's make a decision based on what the potential for upside is versus the potential downside. And the lower the downside and the higher the potential upside, there's very few things in medicine or in life, really, that stand a chance of being really beneficial to you that didn't have some downside. Like, the only way to grow as a man, unfortunately, is really hard. Right? The only way to have, never pray for patience, right? The only way through patience is trials. Like, there's certain problems that the outcome may be worth the struggle you went through. But in medicine, there's very few things that the potential for upside is so high without some significant downside risk. And in our world, with the biologics and with peptides and with ablation and with non-traditional care mode, there's a lot of options that have a very limited potential for risk or failure, or there's almost no one this doesn't make some better. It doesn't make you better enough. I don't know. But we'll figure it out together, because there's always something that could be done. And not always, right? There's no such thing as always and never. If someone comes in with a completely flat hip and the hip is dead on MRI and they have avascular necrosis and they have secondary clot, just avascular necrosis, stem cells intra-articular and into the bone have been shown to be remarkable at bringing the blood supply back to the hip. But if the hip is already collapsed, you already have secondary collapse, then that's not what we talk about. We talk about a resurfacing arthroplasty. You need a new hip. That's very few patients that we see in the clinic with hip pain. Most of the patients we see in the clinic with hip pain, it's something that doesn't require a big joint replacement. With that being said, this was mostly about, it was supposed to be about ablating the posterior nerve to the hip, and what a quick, easy, efficacious, kind of efficient procedure that is. I think probably that was meant to be about a 10-minute talk, and I know that we're way past that. But it's also to discuss the evolution of my training and theories on the way we inject a hip too. It's not about 1 cc of volume. Can you do a stem cell procedure and still not do it right? Absolutely. It's amount of them you've done, the training you've done it, what your results are. So now what do I know? Large volume, intra-articular, document your capsular adhesion released, ablate the posterior aspect of the hip, move it around a little bit while patient's asleep. Let's give you a chance to have dramatic relief for your pain, maintain your functional level, not really have any downtime, lower your surgical risks, and maybe avoid a surgery altogether that has a significant mortality and morbidity rate. With that said, please like and subscribe. If you haven't hit that notification bell, do that for us so that you can be notified when new episodes come out. Again, thank you so much. I genuinely am humbled by the love and trust shown to us by our patients. I feel really blessed by the staff I have right now. Anyone that's come to our clinic knows I have a very small boat as far as people that I love and trust. And I've found out that making that boat too big always causes problems. And it's about a narrow focus when you treat a problem. And it's about a narrow focus in who you're going to trust with your health. And so when people do that with us, I want to let you know I'm humbled and I appreciate it. And thank you guys so much.